Alright, we're in a different room today, so apologies for any echoes you might hear from me. It's my Wi-Fi, it's extra bad, so if it cuts out, apologies. So, in fact, what we'll do at the start is I'll give you a nice wee close-up of Big Boy. Look at this. Look at this big boy. Sleeping in his box. Just sweetheart, what are you doing? In way of payment for the terrible quality of sound, but it's chapter 15, The Cullens. The muted light of yet another cloudy day eventually woke me. I lay with my arm across my eyes, groggy and dazed. Something a dream, trying to be remembered, struggling to break into my consciousness. I moaned and rolled over on my side, hoping more sleep would come. And then the previous day flooded back into my awareness. Oh, I sat up so fast it made my head spin. Your hair looks like a haystack, but I like it. His unruffled voice came from the rocking chair in the corner. Edward, you stayed, I rejoiced, and thoughtlessly threw myself across the room and into his lap. In the instant, my thoughts caught up with my actions. I froze, shocked by my own uncontrolled enthusiasm. I stared up at him, afraid I had crossed the line, but he laughed. Of course, he answered, startled, but seeming pleased by my reaction. His hands rubbed my back. I laid my head cautiously against his shoulder and breathed in the smell of his skin. I was sure it was a dream. You're not that creative, he scoffed. Charlie, I remembered, thoughtlessly jumping up again and heading to the door. He left an hour ago, after reattaching your battery cables, I might add. I have to admit, I was disappointed. Is that really all it would take to stop you if you were really determined to go? I deliberated where I stood, wanting to return to him so badly, but afraid I might have morning breath. You're not usually this confused in the morning, he noted. He held his arms open for me to return, a nearly irresistible invitation. I need another human minute, I admitted. I'll wait. I skipped to the bathroom, my emotions unrecognizable. I didn't know myself, inside or out. The face in the mirror was practically a stranger. Eyes too bright, hectic spots of red across my cheekbones. After brushing my teeth, I worked to straighten out the tangles and the chaos of my hair. I splashed my face with cold water and tried to breathe normally, with no noticeable success. I half ran back to my room. It seemed like a miracle that he was still there, his arms still waiting for me. He reached out to me, and my heart thumped unsteadily. Welcome back, he murmured, taking me into his arms. He rocked me for a while in silence, until I noted that his clothes were changed, his hair smooth. You left, I accused him, touching the collar of his fresh shirt. I'd hardly leave in the clothes I came in. What would the neighbours think? I pouted. You were very deeply asleep. You didn't miss anything. His eyes gleamed. The talking came earlier. I groaned. What did you hear? His eyes grew very soft. You said you loved me. You knew that already, I reminded him, ducking my head. It was nice to hear, just the same. I hid my face against his shoulder. I love you, I whispered. You are my life now, he answered simply. There is nothing more to say at the moment. He rocked us back and forth. The room grew lighter. Breakfast time, he said eventually, casually, to prove, I'm sure, that he remembered all my human frailties. So I clutched my throat with both hands and stared at him with wide eyes. Shock crossed his face. You're kidding, I snickered. And you said I couldn't act. He frowned in disgust. That wasn't funny. It was very funny, and you know it. But I examined his gold eyes carefully to make sure I was forgiven. Apparently I was. Shall I rephrase? He asked. Breakfast time for the human. Oh, okay. He threw me over his stone shoulder, gently, but with a swiftness that left me breathless. I protested as he carried me easily down the stairs, but he ignored me. He sat me right side up on the chair. The kitchen was bright and happy, seemed to absorb my mood. "What's for breakfast?" I asked pleasantly. That threw him for a minute. Uh, I'm not sure. What would you like?" His marble brow puckered. I grinned, hopping up. "That's all right. I can fend for myself pretty well. Watch me hunt." I found a bowl and a box of cereal. I could feel his eyes on me as I poured the milk and grabbed my spoon. I sat, my foot on the table, and then paused. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, not wanting to be rude. He rolled his eyes. "Just eat, Bella." I sat at the table. I watched him as I took a bite. He was gazing at me, studying my every movement. It made me self-conscious. I cleared my mouth to speak, to distract him. "What's on the agenda for today?" I asked. Hmm. I watched him frame his answer carefully. "What would you say to meeting my family?" I gulped. "Are you afraid now?" He sounded hopeful. "Yes," I admitted. How could I deny it? He could see my eyes. "Don't worry," he smirked. "I'll protect you." "I'm not afraid of them," I explained. "I'm afraid they will like me. Won't they be, well, surprised that you would bring someone like me home to meet them? Do they know that I know about them?" "Oh, they know everything. They'd taken bets yesterday. He smiled, but his voice was harsh. "On whether I'd bring you back. Although why anyone would bet against Alice, I can't imagine. At any rate, we don't have any secrets in the family. It's usually not feasible, what with the mind reading and Alice seeing the future and all that. And Jasper making you feel all warm and fuzzy about spilling your guts, don't forget that." "You paid attention," he smiled approvingly. "I'd be known to do that every now and again," I grimaced. "So, did Alice see me coming?" His reaction was strange. "Something like that," he said uncomfortably, turning away so I couldn't see his eyes. I stared at him curiously. "Is that any good?" he asked, turning back to me abruptly and eyeing my breakfast with a teasing look on his face. "Honestly, it doesn't look very appetizing." "Well, it's no irritable grizzly," I muttered, ignoring him, when he glowered. I was still wondering why he'd responded that way when I mentioned Alice. I hurried through my cereal, speculating. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, a statue of Adonis again, staring abstractly out the back windows. And his eyes were back on me, and he smiled his heartbreaking smile. "And you should introduce me to your father too, I think." "He already knows you," I reminded him. "As your boyfriend, I mean." I stared at him with suspicion. "Why? Isn't that customary?" he asked innocently. "I don't know," I admitted. "My dating history gave me a few reference points to work with. Or, my dating history gave me few reference points to work with. Not that any normal rules of dating applied here. That's not necessary. I don't expect you to, I mean, you don't have to pretend for me." His smile was patient. "I'm not pretending." I pushed the remains of my cereal around the edges of the bowl, biting my lip. "Are you going to tell Charlie I'm your boyfriend or not?" he demanded. "Is that what you are?" I suppressed my internal cringing at the thought of Edward and Charlie and the word boyfriend all in the same room. "It's a loose interpretation of the word boy, I'll admit. I was under the impression that you were something more, actually," I confessed, looking at the table. "Well, I don't know if we need to give him all the gory details." He reached across the table to lift my chin with a cold, gentle finger. "But he will need some explanation as to why I'm around here so much. I don't want Chief Swan getting a restraining order on me." "Will you be?" I asked, suddenly anxious. "Will you really be here?" "For as long as you want me," he assured me. "I will always want you," I warned him. "Forever." He walked slowly around the table and paused a few feet away. He reached out to touch his fingertips to my cheek. His expression was unfathomable. Does that make you sad? I asked. He didn't answer. He stared into my eyes for an immeasurable period of time. Are you finished? He finally asked. I jumped up. Yes. Get dressed. I'll wait here. It was hard to decide what to wear. I doubted there were any etiquette books detailing how to dress when your vampire sweetheart takes you home to meet his vampire family. It was a relief to think the word to myself. I knew I shied away from it intentionally. I ended up in only my skirt, long, khaki coloured, still casual. I put on the dark blue blouse he'd once complimented. A quick glance in the mirror told me my hair was entirely impossible. I pulled it back into a ponytail. Okay, I bounced down the stairs. I'm decent. He was waiting at the foot of the stairs, closer than I'd thought, and I bounced right into him. He steadied me, holding me a careful distance for a few seconds before pulling me closer. Wrong again, he muttered in my ear. You're utterly indecent. No one should look so tempting. That's not fair. Tempting how? I asked. I can change. He sighed, shaking his head. You are so absurd. He pressed his cool lips delicately to my forehead, and the room spun. The smell of his breath made it impossible to think. Shall I explain how you're tempting me? He said. It was clearly a rhetorical question. His fingers traced slowly down my spine, his breath coming more quickly against my skin. My hands were limp on his chest. I felt lightheaded again. He tilted his head slowly and touched his cool lips to mine for a second time, very carefully, parting them slightly. And then I collapsed. Bella? His voice was alarmed as he caught me and held me up. You made me faint, I accused him dizzily. What am I going to do with you? He groaned in exasperation. Yesterday I kissed you and you attacked me. Today you pass out on me. I laughed weakly, letting his arms support me while my head spun. So much for being good at everything, he sighed. That's the problem. I was still dizzy. You're too good. Far too good. Do you feel sick? He asked. He'd seen me like this before. No, that wasn't the same kind of fainting at all. I don't know what happened. I shook my head apologetically. I think I forgot to breathe. I can't take you anywhere like this. I'm fine, I insisted. Your family's going to think I'm insane anyway. What's the difference? He measured my expression for a moment. I'm very partial to that colour with your skin, he offered unexpectedly. I flushed with pleasure and looked away. Look, I'm trying really hard not to think about what I'm going to do. So, can we go already? I asked. And you're worried, not because you're headed to meet a house full of vampires, but because you think those vampires won't approve of you, correct? That's right, I answered immediately, hiding my surprise at his casual use of the word. He shook his head. You're incredible. I realised as he drove my truck out of the main part of town that I had no idea where he lived. We passed over a bridge and the Calwell River, the road winding northward, the houses flashing past us, growing further apart, getting bigger. And then we were past all the other houses altogether, driving through misty forest. I was trying to decide whether to ask or be patient when he turned abruptly into an unpaved road that was unmarked, barely visible among the ferns. The road encroached on both sides, or rather the forest encroached the road on both sides, leaving it ahead only discernible for a few metres as it twisted, serpent-like, around the ancient trees. And then, after a few miles, there was some thinning of the woods, and we were suddenly in a small meadow, or was it actually a lawn? The gloom of the forest didn't relent, although for there were 6 primordial cedars that shaded the entire acre with their vast sweep of branches. Trees held their protecting shadow right up to the walls, and the house rose among them, making obsolete the deep porch that wrapped around the first story. I don't know what I expected, but it definitely wasn't this. The house was timeless, graceful, probably 100 years old. It was painted a soft, faded white, 3 stories tall, rectangular, and well proportioned. The windows and doors were either part of the original structure or a perfect restoration. My truck was the only car in sight. I could hear the river close by, hidden in the obscurity of the forest. Whoa, you like it? He smiled. It has a certain charm. He pulled the end of my ponytail and chuckled. Ready? He asked, opening my door. Not even a little bit. Let's go. I tried to laugh, but it seemed to stick in my throat. I smoothed my hair nervously. Apologies. This is why I don't read in here. The dust is terrible. You look lovely, he told me, or he took my hand easily. Without thinking about it, he walked through the deep shade of the porch. I knew he could feel my tension. His thumb rubbed the soothing circles into the back of my hand. He opened the door for me. The inside was even more surprising, less predictable than the exterior. It was very bright, very open, and very large. This must have originally been several rooms, but the wall had been removed from the first floor to create one wide space. The back, south-facing wall had been entirely replaced with glass, and beyond the shade of the cedars, the lawn stretched bare to the wide river. A massive curving stone staircase dominated the west side of the room. The walls, the high beam ceiling, the wooden floors, and the thick carpets were all varying shades of white. Waiting to greet us, standing just left of the door on the raised portion of the floor by a rectangular grand piano, were Edward's parents. I'd seen Dr. Cullen, of course, but couldn't help but be struck again by his youth, his outrageous perfection. By his side was Esme. I assumed only one of the, I assumed the only one of the family I'd never seen before. She had the same pale, beautiful features as the rest of them. Something about her heart-shaped face, her billows of soft, caramel-coloured hair, reminded me of the ingenues of the silent movie era. She was small, slender, yet less angular or rounded than the others. They were both dressed casually in light colours that matched the inside of the house. They smiled in welcome, but made no move to approach us, trying not to frighten me, I guessed. Carlyle, Esme, Edward's voice broke the short silence. This is Bella. You are very welcome, Bella. Carlyle's step was measured, careful, as he approached me. He raised his hand tentatively and stepped forward to shake hands with him. It's nice to see you again, Dr. Cullen. Please, call me Carlyle. Carlyle, I grinned at him. My sudden confidence surprised me. I could feel Edward's relief at my side. Esme smiled and stepped forward as well, reaching for my hand. Her cold stone grasp was just as I'd expected. It's very nice to know you, she said sincerely. Thank you. I'm glad to meet you too. And I was. It was like meeting a fairy tale. Snow White in the flesh. Where are Alice and Jasper? Edward asked, but no one answered as they appeared at the top of the wide staircase. Hey, Edward, Alice called enthusiastically. She ran down the stairs, a streak of black hair and white skin, coming to a sudden, graceful stop in front of me. Carlyle and Esme shot a warning glance at her, but I liked it. It was natural, for her anyway. Hi, Bella, Alice said, and she bounced forward to kiss my cheek. If Carlyle and Esme had looked cautious before, they now looked staggered. There was shock in my eyes too, but I was also very pleased that she seemed to approve of me so entirely. I was startled to feel Edward stiffen at my side. I glanced at his face, but his expression was unreadable. You do smell nice. I never noticed before, she commented, to my extreme embarrassment. No one seemed to know quite what to say, and then Jasper was there, tall and leonine. A feeling of ease spread through me, and I was suddenly comfortable despite where I was. Edward stared at Jasper, raising one eyebrow, and I remembered what Jasper could do. "Hello, Bella," Jasper said. He kept his distance, not offering to shake my hand, but it was impossible to feel awkward near him. "Hello, Jasper." I smiled at him shyly, and then the others. "It's nice to meet you all. You've a very beautiful home," I added conventionally. "Thank you," Esme said. "We're so glad you could come." She spoke with feeling, and I realized that she thought I was brave. I also realized that Rosalie and Emmett were not nowhere to be seen, and I remember Edward's too innocent denial when I asked him if the others didn't like me. Carlyle's expression distracted me from my train of thought. He was gazing meaningfully at Edward with an intense expression. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Edward nod once. I looked away, trying to be polite. My eyes wandered again to the beautiful instrument on the platform by the door. I suddenly remembered my childhood fantasy. I could, should I ever win the lottery, I would buy a grand piano for my mother. She wasn't really good. She only played for herself on her second hand upright, but I loved to watch her play. She was happy, absorbed. She seemed like a new, mysterious being to me then, someone outside the mum persona that I took for granted. She put me through lessons, of course, but like most kids, I'd whined until she'd let me quit. Esme noticed my preoccupation. "Do you play?" she asked, inclining her head toward the piano. I shook my head. "Not at all, but it's so beautiful. Is it yours?" "No," she laughed. "Edward, you didn't tell her that you were musical?" "No." I glared at his suddenly innocent expression with narrowed eyes. "I should have known, I guess." Esme raised her delicate eyebrows in confusion. "Edward can do everything right," I explained. Jasper snickered, and Esme gave Edward a reproving look. "I hope you haven't been showing off. That's rude," she scolded. "Just a bit," he laughed freely. His face softened at the sound, and they shared a brief look that I didn't understand, although Esme's face seemed almost as smug. "He's been too modest, actually," I corrected. "Well, play for her," Esme encouraged. "You just said showing off was rude," he objected. "There are exceptions to every rule," she replied. "I'd like to hear you play," I volunteered. "It's settled then." Esme pushed him toward the piano. He pulled me along, sitting me on the bench beside him. He gave me a long, exasperated look before he turned to the keys, and then his fingers flowed swiftly across the ivory, and the room was filled with a composition so complex, so luxuriant, it was impossible to believe that only one set of hands played. I felt my chin drop, my mouth open in astonishment. I heard low chuckles behind me at my reaction. Edward looked at me casually, the music still surging around us without a break, and winked. "Do you like it?" "You wrote this?" I gasped, understanding. He nodded. "It's Esme's favourite." I closed my eyes, shaking my head. "What's wrong?" "I'm feeling extremely insignificant." The music slowed, transformed into something softer, and, to my surprise, I detected the melody of his lullaby weaving through the profusion of notes. "You inspired this one," he said softly. The music grew unbearably sweet. I couldn't speak. "They like you, you know," he said conversationally, "Esme especially." I glanced behind me, but the huge room was empty now. Where did they go? Very subtly giving us some privacy, I suppose. I sighed. They like me, but Rosalie and Emmett. I trailed off, not sure how to express my doubts. He frowned. "Don't worry about Rosalie," he said, his eyes wide and persuasive. "She'll come around." I pursed my lips skeptically. "Emmett?" "Well, he thinks I'm a lunatic, it's true, but he doesn't have a problem with you. He's trying to reason with Rosalie." "What is it that upsets her?" I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. He sighed deeply. "Rosalie struggles most with what we are. It's hard for her to have someone on the outside know the truth. She's a little jealous." "Rosalie is jealous of me?" I asked incredulously. I tried to imagine in what universe that someone as breathtaking as Rosalie could possibly have any reason to feel jealous of someone like me. You're human, he shrugged. She wishes that she were too. Oh, I muttered, still stunned. Even Jasper, though. That's really my fault, he said. I told you he was the most recent to try our way of life. I warned him to keep his distance. I thought about the reason for that and shuddered. Esme and Carlyle, I continued quickly to keep him from noticing, are happy to see me happy. Actually, Esme wouldn't care if you had a third eye and webbed feet. All this time she's been worrying about me, afraid that there was something missing from my essential makeup, that I was too young when Carlyle changed me. She's ecstatic. Every time I touch you, she's about chokes with satisfaction. Alice seems very enthusiastic. Alice has her own way of looking at things, he said through tight lips. And you're not going to explain that, are you? A moment of wordless communication passed between us. He realized that I knew he was keeping something from me. I realized that he wasn't going to give me anything anyway. Not now. So, what was Carlyle telling you before? His eyebrows pulled together. Noticed that, did you? I shrugged. Of course. He looked at me thoughtfully for a few seconds before answering. He wanted to tell me some news. He didn't know if it was something that I would share with you. Will you? I have to because I'm going to be a little overbearing and protective for the next few days or weeks. I wouldn't want you to naturally think I'm a tyrant. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly. Alice just sees some visitors coming soon. They know we're here and they're curious. Visitors? Yes, well, they aren't like us, of course. In their hunting habits, I mean. They probably won't come into town at all, but I'm certainly not going to let you out of my sight till they're gone. I shivered. Finally a rational response, he muttered. I was beginning to think you had no self-preservation at all. I let that one pass. Looking away, my eyes wandered again around the spacious room. He followed my gaze. Not what you're expecting, is it? He asked, his voice smug. No, I admitted. No coffins, no piled skulls in the corners. I don't think we have cobwebs. What a disappointment this must be for you, he continued slyly. I ignored the teasing. It's so light, so open. He was more serious when he answered. It's the one place we never have to hide. The song he was still playing, my song, drifted to an end, the final chord shifting to a more melancholy key, the last note hovering poignantly in the silence. Thank you, I murmured. I realized there were tears in my eyes. I dabbed at them, embarrassed. He touched the corner of my eye, tapping the one I missed. He lifted a finger, examining the drop of moisture broodingly. Then, so quickly, I couldn't be positive he really did it. He put his finger to his mouth to taste it. I looked at him questioningly, and he gazed back for a long moment before he finally smiled. Do you want to see the rest of our house? No coffins? I verified, sarcasm in my voice not entirely masking the slight but genuine anxiety I felt. He laughed, taking my hand, leading me away from the piano. No coffins, he promised. We walked up the massive staircase, my hand trailing along the satin-smooth rail. The long hall at the top of the stairs was panelled with a honey-coloured wood, the same as the floorboards. Rosalie and Emmett's room, Carlyle's office, Alice's room. He gestured as he led me past the doors. He would have continued, but I stopped dead at the end of the hall, staring incredulous at the ornament hanging on the wall above my bed, my head. Edward chuckled at my bewildered expression. You can laugh, he said. It is sort of ironic. I didn't laugh. I raised my hand automatically, one finger extended as if to touch the large wooden cross, its dark patina contrasting with the lighter tone of the wall. I didn't touch it, though I was curious if the aged wood would feel as silky as it looked. It must be very old, I guessed. He shrugged. Early 1630s or more. I looked away from the cross to stare at him. Why do you keep it here? I wondered. Nostalgia. It belonged to Carlyle's father. He collected antiques, I suggested doubtfully. No, he carved it himself and hung it on the wall above the pulpit of the vicarage where he preached. I wasn't sure if my face betrayed my shock, but I returned to gazing at the simple ancient cross, just in case. I quickly did the mental math. The cross was over 370 years old. The silence stretched on as I struggled to wrap my mind around the concept of so many years. Are you all right? He sounded worried. How old is Carlyle? I asked quietly, ignoring his question and staring up. Just celebrated his 362nd birthday, Edward said. I looked back at him, a million questions in my eyes. He watched me carefully as he spoke. Carlyle was born in London in the 1640s, he believes. Time wasn't marked just as accurately then, for the common people anyway. It was just before Cromwell's rule, though. I kept my face composed, aware of his scrutiny as I listened. It was easier than if I didn't try to believe. He was the only son of an Anglican pastor. His mother died giving birth to them. His father was an intolerant man. As the Protestants came into power, he was enthusiastic in his uh, persecution of Roman Catholics and other religions. He also believed very strongly in the reality of evil. He led hunts for witches and werewolves and vampires. I grew very still at the word. I'm sure he noticed, but he went on without pausing. They burned a lot of innocent people. Of course, the real creatures that he sought were not so easy to catch. When the pastor grew old, he placed his obedient son in charge of the raids. At first, Carlyle was a disappointment. He was not so quick to accuse, to see demons where they did not exist. But he was persistent and more clever than his father. He actually discovered a coven of true vampires that lived hidden in the sewers of the city, only coming out at night to hunt. In those days, when monsters were not just myths and legends, there was the way many lived. The people gathered their pitchforks and torches, of course. His brief laugh was darker now, and waited where Carlyle would have seen the monsters exit onto the street. Eventually one emerged. His voice was very quiet. I strained to catch his words. He must have been ancient and weak with hunger, Carlyle heard him call out in Latin when the others caught the scent of the mob. He ran through the streets, and Carlyle, he was 23 and very fast, was in the lead of the pursuit. The creature could have easily outrun him, but Carlyle thinks that he was just too hungry, so he turned and attacked. He fell on Carlyle first, but the others were close behind, and he turned to defend himself. He killed 2 men and made off with the third, leaving Carlyle bleeding on the street. He paused. I could sense he was editing something, keeping something from me. Carlyle knew what his father would do. The bodies would be burned. Anything infected by the monster would just be destroyed. Carlyle acted instinctively to save his own life. He crawled away from the alley while the mob followed the fiend and his victim. He hid in the cellar, buried himself in rotting potatoes for 3 days. It's a miracle he was able to keep silent, to stay undiscovered. It was over then, and he realized what he'd become. Not quite sure what my face was revealing, but he suddenly broke off. How are you feeling? He asked. I'm fine, I assured him, although I bit my lip in hesitation. He must have seen curiosity burning in my eyes. He smiled. I expect you to have a few more questions for me. A few. His smile widened over his brilliant teeth. He stared back down the hall, pulling me along by my hand. Come on then, he encouraged. I'll show you. That's the end of chapter 15. Thank you for listening.